Nick's, hi, Nick's there. Nick Stevens is there.
Right, we have 5 seconds before we fire.
I'll do the count of the 5, 4, 3, 2, run VT.
Right, well, we're late. Hello, everybody. Good evening to all from here in the UK. I believe we've got about 90 people on board already. And I think there are many in the USA and many from around the world. And many members I can see also on screen. For those who don't know me, I'm Alistair Scott, a past president of the Society. But now as chair of the events committee, I try to keep all our events and activities going. And I'm always on the lookout for interesting and forward-looking talks. It's great to have so many of you here for tonight's fascinating talk. This is the British Interplanetary Society's 18th live-streamed lecture since the start of the first lockdown in March of last year. Tickets are now also on sale for our Reinventing Space conference in the QE2 Conference Centre in Westminster on 28th to 30th of October. The outline program is also available on our website. Now, despite the recent news on the pandemic, we still expect to be a live face-to-face conference. So I look forward to seeing you all there. The QE2 Conference Centre is able to introduce social distancing if required, and the whole event will be available online. Today we're using Google Meets for the first time, so it's a slight experiment for both the presentation and the Q&A. If you enjoy this evening and want to make a small donation, please go to the BIS website and click on the donate button. Every little helps to cover the cost of these lectures. Please use the chat box to ask your questions and get them in as quickly as possible, as they will probably, or no doubt, they will steer the course of the discussion. I'm pleased to say that we have with us tonight the man himself, Ron Miller, all the way from Virginia. So it's lunchtime over there. And I'm now going to hand over to Matt Irvin, who is going to lead the conversation, do the introductions, and also lead the Q&A. So over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Alistair. Welcome to all. Some I've got pictures up. I don't know who everybody is there, but hi to anybody who knows me, and hi to anybody who doesn't. Anyway, I'm here because I suggested Ron, so you can blame me, Ron, to give a talk. And I've known Ron for many, many years anyway, and filmed him a couple of times for BBC programmes. Stayed at his place in Virginia, and I thought he'd make a good chat that is not perhaps too serious, but he's still entertaining, because I mean the stuff that Ron's done over the years. I will quote Arthur, who, because you all know, I don't have to say Clark, who is reported to have said of Ron that he's I think he's disgustingly talented, or it's something, words to that effect, or something, unfairly talented or something. So I will introduce Ron, turn over to him, and he's going to show you at first a series of pictures that he's painted over the years. I believe we start with number 1. And if anybody's got any questions, as Alistair said, can you use the chat, please? It's up at the top. There's a little bubble box with lines, and your chat will come up on your right-hand side. And then I can see those and then decide whether just to read them out, or, hey, they can actually give, so we'll actually put you on live, as it were. So make sure your hair's combed. So anyway, I'm handing over to Ron now. Ron, it's all yours.
Oh, thanks a lot. Well, thanks for inviting me for this. This is going to be a lot of fun. I've been a BIS fan as long as I've been able to spell BIS. What I'm going to do is show some slides, about 25 or 30 of them, going back to the very first space paint I ever did, and that was about 50 years ago. But I've been a fan of space and astronomy and science fiction literally as long as I can remember. I would rush home from grade school in order to catch the latest episode of Space Patrol. The first books I remember reading are books about astronomy, and the first real book I ever read in my life was Jules Verne. So this has been a part of my life really since the get-go. I didn't really try my own space art. As big a fan as I was of Chesley Bonestell until I was in college, largely because Bonestell was so intimidating. You know, you can't paint like those things because they were paintings. They were postcards from the future or something. But after seeing 2001, it really gave me an impetus to try some space art, and an assignment in college, the art college I went to, involved doing some space art. So I did my very first one, I guess I've been in 1968. Let's see if I can get my slideshow running. This has always been kind of iffy here because this Google chat thing is new to me too. So let me see, get this thing rolling, and give me a second. Give me a second here. Come on. There we go. Yeah, this is the very first space paint I did in my entire life. It was part of a school assignment in 1968. It was Uranus seen from one of its moons. What little I knew about it at the time. So I started doing a series of space paintings, which I'll get to in a second as soon as this thing loads up. It's being a little slow. Here we go. Let's try this. There we go. So these are all done late 60s, very early 70s. And around this time, I saw an ad for a print of a Bonestell painting. I thought, gosh, I'll send for this, of course. I can only afford one. They had two different ones. And I included a letter. I wanted to know if Bonestell was still alive. And if he was, tell him how much I admired his work. Well, it turns out Bonestell was still alive. And Bill Essler, who was his manager at the time, wrote back to me and said, yes, Bonestell's were alive. We enjoyed seeing your work. Did you know that there's going to be a planetarium at the new Air and Space Museum in Washington that's under construction? I said, no, I didn't know that. And Bill said, well, you should try to get a job there as the illustrator. So I wrote to the Air and Space Museum, and they hadn't really thought about it, but they said, sure, maybe we do need one. So I went to work at the Air and Space Museum for 4 years, doing artwork for the planetarium. The only picture I have of me there is me painting a mural of Io orbiting Jupiter here. So let's see here. Come on. Here we go. So all my artwork up until about 2000 was done in traditional media. These are all acrylic paintings, and were done for magazines and books, and especially my first real book, which is the Grand Tour, which I did 100 paintings for. And these are some of them. There we go. Sorry, this is so slow. Back up. See, I got to be the speaker with the experimental Google chat program here. So it's, there we go. So about come around 2000, I had an assignment where I had to do 10 books, write them and illustrate them. And I realized there was no possible way in the world I was going to be able to write and illustrate 10 books in the amount of time I had. There we go. These things are, I hope these things are popping up faster for you than they are for me. So a lot of my friends have been urging me to work digitally, and I'd resisted that. I was afraid my work might look too generic, too digital, too computery. But I realized I had no choice, so I bit the bullet. And here we go. This is one of my last traditional space paintings, as was this one. So for the new series of books, I said, well, I'll do digital, and this was my first efforts. Mercury, sun scene from Mercury. So I showed this around to all my space art friends, and they all said, "Whoa, it looks like a Ron Miller painting." That's all I needed to hear. And I haven't gone back since, until recently. I'll get to that in a minute. So all my artwork for the later editions of the Grand Tour, for magazines like Astronomy and Sky and Telescope and Scientific American, these have all been digital paintings. And it's been a lot of fun because each one gives me something entirely new and interesting to try and do. We're going to go through the solar system here for maybe a picture or two for each planet. This is a glacier at near one of Mercury's poles. Venus. I like doing Venus because I like doing lava. And it gives me a good excuse to do that. With an erupting volcano in the distance, with lightning all around it, a dim, shaded sun in the sky. This is a future floating colony in Venus's clouds. I personally don't think I want to stay on one, but it was a fun illustration to do. And I don't usually do hardware very often, so doing any kind of spacecraft is always a challenge for me. And I was happy it came out as well as it did. Let's see, trying to move on to the moon. Come on. Hey, Matt.
Yep.
Are you there?
Yep.
What are you seeing?
I'm seeing the moon.
Okay, well, I'm not. So, okay, I'll assume you're seeing. Okay.
I'm seeing.
This is the creation of the Earth's moon when Theia, a little Mars-sized object, slammed into the Earth 4 billion years ago. Okay, I'll go by my thumbnails, not by my big screen.
Ron, sorry, we got just a technical thing. It's a Google thing. A lot of people are apparently not being able to see the full screen. If you go to, and in fact, people have suggested this already. If you go down to the bottom, the far bottom right, there are 3 dots, the classic menu, although they're vertical. That will give you the option of showing full screen. I haven't tried it myself because I need to see everything.
Well,
but that could work for other people.
Well, let's back up here then, and I'll stop sharing and go back to the original. And 3 dots.
I think it's only viewing, Ron, not presenting. I think presenting is the present now, which is the little icon to the left of that.
Well, let's see, present now my entire screen. We'll try that.
Yeah.
Share. Hang on. And we'll go back to this. How's that?
That's what it was before.
Well, that's probably all you're going to get.
I'm thinking I can only advise anybody else to try the 3 dots and do full screen. As I said, I can't do it. I've got to see everything. But hey,
yeah, I've done all I can do on my end.
Yeah. No. Back to you, Ron.
Okay. Well, this was the most recent solar eclipse seen from the moon. So that's the moon's shadow occulting part of the east coast of the United States. And the moon's lit up with Earth light. Mars. I like doing Mars because, I don't know, I just like doing Mars. I must have it's probably 50 Mars paintings in my folder. I think I like Mars, but I like doing dust devils. Another Mars. Here's a couple of explorers discovering an outcropping of ice on Mars. And early Mars. Asteroid slammed into Mars, causing a sort of a global tidal wave. It's carved out, these endless canyons and water erosion features on Mars. So this is a tsunami on Mars. Exploring Jupiter. This was for a book that came out a couple of years ago called Zoomable Universe. It was a lot of fun to work on. In a Jupiter cloud canyon. Pipe up with any questions. I'll stop anytime. One of my favorite things is Io. I have probably 25 or 30 pictures of Io. It's got to be one of the most fun things to illustrate with everything going on that's going on it. I also like Europa. So I'm only showing pictures of places I like a lot. So there's some explorers here and way down there, exploring an ice fracture on Europa. The other spacecraft is over here parked at the foot of a glacier.
Ron, I'll ask you a question because I'm live. Are there any, what don't you like painting then? You're only showing us the ones you like. Are there any satellite planets you say, I don't want to do those?
That I don't like? No.
Yeah.
These are the ones I like best. I like them all. I can't think of anything out there that I don't like. There's some places that have enough, are unusual enough, and have a lot of variety in their landscapes. There's something unusual about them that makes them especially fun. And Europa is a lot of fun because Jupiter is a great size in the sky. It's got thermal features. It's got cracks in the ice and glaciers. So it's got a lot of variety to it. And so there's an endless number of things to illustrate.
Got one question here from Austin Tate. He's wondering, are any of these images ones that you would not think reasonably representative of today if we'd explored, once we eventually get there and explore?
All the ones I've shown you since I started working with the digital, say around 2000 or so. Like I said, the ones I've done like the last 15 years, and most of these now are ones I've done like within the last decade. I think are pretty close to what you would find if you were to go there.
Austin,
what?
Austin is live. Do you want to add to it?
I try to keep things as updated as I can. If I read in the news some discovery, some new feature found, I'll immediately sit down and do an illustration of it. I try to keep my portfolio up to date.
This is Austin. I thought that might be your answer, Ron, and it reflects on the kind of research you do. These images are fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you.
Got a question from Patrick Mann. Can you live him, please, Elizabeth? Patrick, you want to ask Ron how long it takes him to do one of the paintings?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Well, yeah, Ron, I'm just wondering how long does it take you to paint one of these? I mean, obviously it'll depend on the size and the level of detail, but what's the sort of typical time it might take you to paint one of these images?
Well, the best answer is really akin to an answer that Chesley Bonestell gave when asked a similar question. When he was asked one time, how long does it take you to do a painting? And Bonestell said, well, it takes about 4 days and 40 years of experience. And which is probably the best possible answer. The digital artwork takes actually almost as long as it takes me to do a traditional painting, about anywhere from maybe 2 or 3 days.
Brilliant, thanks.
But like I said, a lot of it comes like what Bonestell said, just knowing what you're doing to start with. So there's
actually there's a question from Bonnie Ginsberg about Bonestell. Can you live his mic, Elizabeth?
Pardon? Oh.
It's more about Bonnie Ginsberg.
Bonnie, if you just want to unmute yourself, you can.
All right. Yeah. Give your question.
Dave Ginsberg.
Yeah. Can you give your question to Ron?
Yeah, I'm using my my wife's account. So Ron, yeah, you mentioned you wrote to Chesley Bonestell. I'm just curious about how he's influenced your work and what kind of interactions you've had with him.
I didn't quite catch that. Could you repeat that, Matt? Or
yeah, well, it's basically how Bonestell did influence you. I think they got it correct.
Well, totally. I try every picture I do has some influence by Bonestell in it. My compositions, the way I compose things, you know, the placement of things within the picture, it's very Bonestellian. At least I like to think so. I have a whole collection of his books sitting literally 3 feet from my left hand here. I
He
look at his
has,
stuff
I've
all the
seen that.
time, so it's a huge influence. I try to think what he would have been pleased to have seen. Oh, this is one of my favorite pictures. I absolutely love Titan, everything about it. And this depicts a few minutes just after a methane rainstorm has passed on Titan. So there's a little methane waterfall that's running down here, and there's a little methane river, and there's the storm way off in the distance, just moving away.
Got a question from Steve Salmon. If you can unmute yourself, Steve, and ask your question direct to Ron.
Hi, Ron.
Hi.
It's great to see these fantastic works. Really amazing. Just wish we could see them a little bigger. Just wanted to know, when you use digital software, what systems do you like to use?
Actually, Photoshop is the main thing I use. And then after that, a wide variety of things. There's everything. Terrigen is a little program that helps me generate some of the landforms. But after that, there's a lot of hand painting I go back in and do in Photoshop. There's digital photography involved. For example, everywhere I go, I take a camera. If I see a cool looking rock or a crack in the ground or some ice or something like that, I take a photograph of it. And a lot of these little details and bits and pieces will show up in the pictures. So how they're done kind of depends on which picture you're pointing at when you ask the question.
That's great. Thanks very much indeed.
You're welcome. I wish I could answer more specifically. This is a dust storm on Titan. And a little methane waterfall near the southern mountains, or the foothills of the southern mountains on Titan. I like Titan a lot too. You guys are lucky. I probably have like 2,500 or 3,000 pictures in my collection. So narrowing it down to like 30 was kind of rough. So oh, this is a proposed submersible, robot submersible, exploring one of the seas on Titan. So I printed out. NASA has all kinds of models that you can print on a 3D printer, and so I printed out a little 6-inch model on my 3D printer, and it wound up in here.
Got a question from Alex Wood. If you can unmute, if you want to give it to Ron yourself, about how you went digital. Alex, are you there?
Hello.
All right. Yeah.
You said you went digital to save time when you had a lot of images to produce, but
yeah,
how long did it take you to learn the digital techniques to a high enough standard?
Well, by necessity, very, very quickly, because I had a deadline to face. I had been playing with it for a while, so I knew the rudiments of it, but it was a learn as I go process, and it still is. I try to find something new on each one that I haven't tried before, just to see what happens. Yeah, originally it was pretty steep learning curve. I had to get up real fast because I had a deadline facing me, and I had to do probably 80 or 90 illustrations in the course of like 6 months, and so I had to learn fast. I think they're better now than they were then, but it's a lot of fun, and the trick is to not let the software dictate to you how things look. It's just a tool, and sometimes you have to force it to be right. So that's why there's a lot of handwork in these things. I can't just take what the computer puts out, because it's not always very good, not always very accurate. Its perspective might be off, the color's wrong. So I had to go in and do a lot of work to make it the way I want it, not the way the computer wants it.
Yes, you said it takes about as long to make them digitally as it did before. So how much time did you actually save in the end when you had
Well,
the study?
I do sometimes wonder. Well, to get to the level of detail of these things, it would take me probably a week to do well, at the very tail end of the show, the slideshow, I have some recent traditional space paintings I've done over the last few months, just for myself, and I'll show those, and then you can compare them.
I got a question from Alan Marlowe. Alan, do you want to unmute yourself? Hello, Alan. Hello. Haven't got Alan there apparently, right? Got another message from Austin. If you want to, you're about Terragen, which I've used as well, actually, not for as good as Ron. But if you want to give it.
Well, it wasn't a question, it was just an observation. Ron is mentioning here using Terragen with 3D modeling of terrain and using those 3D printout models from NASA. I'm very, very interested in VR and virtual worlds and being able to visit inside these creations. And I just wonder if Ron's been looking at anything like that idea that you can just literally step into his paintings and walk through them or fly through them in VR and virtual reality and virtual worlds.
I did do a little animation back when I was first learning about Terragen. What makes it difficult to do it now is that so much is added to the rendered picture.
Yeah, no, I understand that, Ron. Yeah.
So that makes it hard.
I wasn't really meaning an animation though. I was meaning literally the entry into it. But I do understand what you're saying. The effects. I mean, all your painting is effectively added on to that simple terrain. Yeah.
Yeah, if I've cut and pasted a rock for texture or something into a picture, I can't move around that.
One day though, we'll be able to fly through these things, eh?
Oh, I love to. I need to work with somebody who is adept at animation, which I'm not. I know the principles of it, but it's hard. It's enough of my time spent learning how to do this. So, but I'd like to work with somebody. I actually have the ex art director for Scientific American, Ed Bell, has taken a lot of my artwork and has added animated features to it. For example, a picture of say Io with an erupting volcano, and the volcano is animated. So he's done this with a lot of my paintings, and it's very effective. Well, by the way, these are auroras on Uranus we're looking at here. Pluto. I have a very proprietary interest in Pluto. So, which is a planet, I'll have you know. The proprietary interest comes from having done postage stamps back in '98, one for each planet and the moon, and each stamp had a spacecraft associated with that planet except for Pluto. And that stamp said, Pluto not yet explored. Well, Alan Stern attached one of those stamps to the New Horizons spacecraft. And that stamp is now in the Guinness Book of World Records as having traveled further than any other stamp in history. I can only hope that they had the thing canceled before it left. Otherwise, it's going to come right back here one of these days.
You put the return address on it?
I hope so. This is a nitrogen glacier on Pluto. Everything about Pluto fascinates me. It's an incredible world with an insanely varied landscape. Here's a little sunrise near Pluto's pole. It's got to be a pretty little place. I hope they do it. They're talking about a lander now, and I hope I live long enough to see pictures from the surface of Pluto. Getting further out, pardon?
So I was just going to give you another question, but carry on from Monkey Ron.
Sure.
From Alex Wood, if you want to unmute, you got a question about the scientific accuracy. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you ever work with scientists to verify the scientific accuracy of your pictures?
Oh, I often interview or talk to some of the scientists involved, especially, if I have something really new and I have questions. Alan Stern, for example, has reviewed a lot of my Pluto paintings. I've asked him about details. Carolyn Porco, I've consulted a lot about my paintings of Enceladus, for instance. So if I don't think I can get what I need in any detail from the literature, I'll contact the scientists, because I do like having these things to be as accurate as I can make them. I think a space painting has to have a balance. It needs to be, it needs to accurately depict what it says it's depicting. Like if you do a portrait of somebody, it should look like the person. But by the same token, they also have to work as landscapes. They have to work as paintings. So they have to be aesthetically successful as well as scientifically accurate.
So can you give any?
Hmm?
Can you give any examples of extra details that they gave you that you didn't get from the literature?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I don't know. Everything ultimately comes from something I've either read of or extrapolated from. Sometimes you have to, let's see, think what the surface of some exoplanet would look like. I might have to extrapolate that from what might seem unrelated information, like the distance from the star, or the composition of the star, things like that, and make a best guess. So, so sometimes there's guesswork, but I try to make the guesswork as educated as I can. Well,
there's a question.
This is an exoplanet. This is an exoplanet of a pulsar, by the way. Oh, it's a blank one.
Before we drop into this, Ron, the question from Alan Marlowe, and he can't unmute apparently. I'll read it, what he said.
Okay.
How important do you think space art was in motivating the exploration of space in the past and in the future?
It was actually vital. The best example of it's widely influential, but the best example of this, of course, is the work of Chesley Bonestell, and specifically the Collier's Magazine space series that Bonestell, Fred Freeman, and Rolf Klepp illustrated, and Werner von Braun, Willy Ley, and a slew of other people wrote. This series of magazine articles in one of the most popular magazines in the United States came about exactly at the right moment, just when the United States was getting geared up for excitement about possibility of exploring space. And these articles showed to people that it wasn't something fantastic, something for the far distant future, that it could be accomplished then in the 1950s. And all that was required would be resolve to do it and the money. And more than one space historian has attributed the genesis of public support for the U.S. space program, specifically to that magazine series. It was immensely influential, and some spin-offs of that's like the Walt Disney Man in Space series on television, which came out about the same time. It was another artistic depiction of the exploration of space that was, again, extremely influential. I think Eisenhower ordered a copy of the Disney series to show in the White House. So yeah, the arts has been very important.
Just to say, was it Malcolm Curry? You've just shown a picture of up in his. I can see his image small, but it's the same image you've got on the screen. So it's a print of that. So you've had a sale there, at least one there. Sorry, carry on. I've got another question after it, but carry on for this one.
Well, we're moving out towards the end here anyway. This was done for Scientific American, and it's a super colossal black hole devouring a star wholesale. But this is the sort of thing that's a lot of fun to do. So.
Griff Ingram, one of our long-suffering staff at headquarters, wants to ask the question: about your Captain Judica books and the BIS own ship. Yes, I know the answer to this. I've got to go back and can you unmute Griff, or are you unable to?
I think I've just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
You have unmuted. We can hear you. Ask a question yourself.
Okay. Well, I noticed that in the Bronwyn books, the prequel to the Captain Judica stories, you've got the BIS moonship as originally as a steampunk spaceship. We'll be sending the copyright bill around later. I noticed also in the Captain Judica books, you got on the cover that the spaceship from Flight to Mars, the Thing from Beyond Space, and any number of other movies that was originally going to be the Luna in Destination Moon. One thing, I presume the model for Captain Judica is your good lady wife.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, she is, I should say. It was a costume that Judith made to wear to science fiction conventions. That was her alter ego.
Oh, that's cool.
Next time I visit you guys in one of these forums, I'll show who we're talking about.
Jolly good.
It's the way space flight was meant to be.
Absolutely.
Oh, this is an exoplanet. This is one of the TRAPPIST planets. I forget which one. Another TRAPPIST. There's like 7 of them, so I can't remember which one it is without reading the captions. And this is a super Earth. This is for Scientific American. It was for an article illustrating the idea that there may be planets better suited for life than the Earth is. And they call it better than Earths. For one thing, they're larger, so seas are shallower, which the shallow seas are more conducive to the evolution of life than deep water would be. So there's a lot of reasons for that. These bigger planets, Earth-like planets, might be more conducive for the evolution of life than the Earth was. Okay, almost to the end now. These are some paintings I've done recently with a lot more time on my hands lately because of all the COVID restrictions. I've just for myself, I've gone back to pull all my acrylic paints out, and I've been doing some traditional space paintings just for my own fun. So these are really recent. It's the last couple of months. Jupiter, well, obviously. Saturn from Rhea. Going back to traditional painting was kind of rough. I would sit back and look at an old painting and think, how in the world did I do that? I look at these textures and things, and I know I did it, but how? So this is a painting I did of Pluto about around just after Christmas. Again, because I like Pluto a lot. And these paintings are about 15 by 20 inches. They take about 2 days to do. In case to answer that previous question. My most recent project was this book, which came out in April rather. It's for young adults, and it's called The Book of Moons, and it's exactly what it is. It's all about the natural satellites of the solar system, all about the moons. Because I felt the moons have always gotten short shrift. They're always a footnote. It's always Jupiter and its moons, Saturn and its moons. Well, this book is just about moons, and it was a lot of fun to do. And here's a couple of illustrations from it. We saw that one and that one. Here's a geyser on Europa from the book, and Phobos breaking up in the distant future as it approaches a little bit too close to Mars. And one of Neptune's cryogeysers. So all these are from that new book. Available at better bookstores everywhere. And Io, again. That was fun. I love doing volcanoes. I think that might be one more. Oh yes, this is an Earth-like moon of a giant exoplanet. So the idea being that might be moons out there that are large enough, they're Earth-sized, and life might evolve on these Earth-like moons orbiting these exoplanets. Well, that covers about 50 years pretty quickly. So I guess we can open things to discussion, I suppose, as soon as I get out of here.
Any more questions from anybody? Nobody's posted on the chat at the moment. I noted Nick, you'd ask a question, but I think it was the same as
Hi, Nick.
About there's somebody else that I think it was Austin had asked, so I didn't actually read it out. I remember, if I can find it, Rod Buckland mentioned we're going back to Saturn now and Titan. About the fact is the first object to touch the surface that wasn't native was built here in Milton Keynes because it was part of the lander. But that was going back some way actually, Rod. I don't know if you're still there, but I can't see it. But I vaguely remember that question.
You mean this? That was built by a friend of mine back here. Chesley Bonestell originally designed that, and it's always been one of my favorite spaceships. It was originally going to be this Luna from Destination Moon. Got eventually recycled in Flight to Mars and countless other movies, and it's really what God intended a spaceship to look like. So I keep it around as a reminder. what I hope we're heading towards.
Well, I always reckon you ask, probably not these days, but go back a few years, ask any kid to draw a spaceship and they'll end up with a V2.
Yeah. I think that V2 silhouette has become a kind of a cultural, embedded cultural icon that people who don't even know what a V2 is, may never have seen one, will immediately recognize that silhouette as a spaceship. It's part of our culture.
I suppose, unless you're in wartime London or Amsterdam, in which case it possibly has another but let's put that on one side. And yes, I regard it as a bit like a Dalek. The shape is the shape of it. I mean, we had kids of 9 years old when Daleks have been off the screen for 10 years. They still don't know what a Dalek was, so presumably they know what a V2 looks like. It's a spaceship.
Yeah. Well, even now you see retro style spaceship toys and lamps and things like this, and any retro spaceship is V2 like. Even Wallace and Gromit's spaceship was a V2 like thing.
The Tintin rocket certainly is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, I've got your picture up. Yes, I can see it. Right, what have we got? Sorry, some more questions have come in. Griff, if you're still there, do you want to ask your question about the replacement lost Bonestell pictures?
Sure. I believe a couple of Chesley Bonestell's Mars exploration pictures from the Collier's series have been lost, and you did replacements for them. Yes,
I did. When Fred Ordway organized the Blueprint for Space exhibition 20 years ago, he owned all of the Collier's artwork, including all the Fred Freeman paintings as well as the Bonestell paintings, except for three. 3 Bonestell paintings were lost. And he didn't want to have that hole in the show, so he asked if I could recreate them. And I did, as close to the original size as I could judge them to be. And all I can say after finishing them is that whatever they paid Bonestell to do them wasn't enough.
Were you basing them on presumably black and white photographs or something?
We had photos of them, of course, and I tried to duplicate them literally down to the finest detail. And what it did was it made me look really, really closely at Bonestell's work. One of them was a close-up of one of his big Mars ships, looking right over it, and seeing what he did with light. there would be a reflections of reflections in reflections as light bounced back and forth between, you know, parts of the spacecraft. And it was astonishing looking at the way Bonacill thought light, shadow, and perspective out. I learned a lot just doing those 3 paintings. I'll never do them again, but I learned a lot.
Actually, Nick, you've asked about the model behind Ron, but I think Ron's basically answered what it is. You'll have his fingers out. Okay, I've got a question from Rich R. I don't know who Rich R is. If you're there, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question to Ron? Rich?
Oh, hi, Ron. Yeah,
Hi, Rich.
how you doing? Yeah, ever since I've seen a picture of the same, I don't know if there's many of them, but there's a sinkhole on Mars. I always wondered what it would look like being inside there, and I don't know if you've ever done a painting.
I've done 2.
Oh, okay. I missed it.
One as recently as last week. And
Really?
I wanted to draw the line somewhere. I didn't know how long it would take to show my pictures, so I kept my things limited. But yeah, I've done 2 of them. And
Awesome. I can't
if
wait
you
to
go to my Facebook page, well, there's a Black Cat Studios Facebook page that is devoted specifically to my paintings, and it's in there.
Okay, great. I'll look for it. Thank you.
I hope you like it. It's a bunch of explorers discovering ice inside one wall of the lava tube, being lit from above, you know, by the big circular opening.
Wow, I can't wait to check this out.
There's another question from Alex Wood. Alex, if you're there.
Yeah, I was just wondering what features are the most difficult to get right?
Gosh, well, anything new I haven't tried before. Gosh, I don't know. Everything's so much fun. It's hard to say that something's difficult. So I don't think of it in those terms. Some things take longer than others, but it's largely because I'm experimenting and trying things out. So I don't know if there's any particular kind of feature that I say would not look forward to doing. So I guess the answer is kind of ambivalent. It's all fun.
There's another question from Patrick Martin about you asked about scientists. Patrick, do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Just wondering, as well as talking to scientists to get the details right, do you also talk to science fiction writers to, you know, get their end of the sort of inspiration of science fiction ideas? Does that help at all? Does that inspire you?
I do a lot of science fiction artwork, but I don't mix them up too much. No, I've never consulted a science fiction writer on a science subject, unless the science fiction writer like Greg Benford is a scientist. So no.
Steve, you got another question about, because you lost the sound. No, the question wasn't covered. So if you want to start it again.
Thanks very much. Great presentation, Ron. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was just very interested because I'm also wanting to get into 3D printing. I've been threatening to do that for a while now, but just haven't got around to it, unfortunately. I'm just interested to know what 3D printer you use and the software you prefer to use.
Well, it's one my wife got me for Christmas 2 years ago. It's a Prusa clone. I don't think it actually has a manufacturer's name. And the software is, gosh, wait a minute, it's on my computer. Let me shrink this down and tell you what it is. It's where is it? Oh, Ultimaker, Cura. Yeah, Ultimaker.
Ultimaker,
Cura.
right. Great. And
This,
just because you made a reference.
My little submarine. So.
Oh, cute. Just because you made a reference to being able to do possible animation at one point, a recent member who joined the IAAA is a gentleman by the name of Jason Podmore, and he would be well worth speaking to. He's currently done a lot of work for Forward Futures. It's called 4, as in number 4, and Forward Futures. But I'm sure from the members list you can find Jason Podmore, but he's done some excellent work.
Well, anybody who knows more about it than I do is I'd be glad to talk to.
Right. Okay. Anyway, I just thought I'd let you know that.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thanks a lot for the answer.
We got a question from David Newling. David, if you want to unmute yourself, about orbital platforms and space elevators. Are you there?
Yeah. Hi. Good evening, gentlemen. We were saying that art can drive production of things. Inspire people to do things. I just wondered if the art could produce inspiration in people to develop space elevator, orbital platforms, rather than trying to shove rockets into orbit, with all the attendant problems.
I'm not too sure if I followed the question exactly.
Yeah, we're saying in the way that
I think I know what you're saying on it is because we just did the review of Piers Pisoni's book in Spaceflight, where of course all the American artwork, a lot of it for Apollo particularly, got the public's attention by the artwork. It wasn't the hardware; it hadn't been built at the time. So I think it's basically that's what you're saying, isn't it, David? If we do the decent artwork, we can get the space elevator built, and Arthur will be delighted.
Oh, well, yeah, it's a good point. Art sells really well. I mean, that's why you see art in advertising, selling beans and toasters and pizzas. There's a difference between an intellectual concept or something written out in words or in tables and figures and graphs. Be able to see it in front of you as an actual object in a sense. It makes a big difference. That's part of how artwork has always helped sell the space program. And art has always been part of selling space, going back even to like Max Valier back in the 1920s and 30s, who hired a couple of artists, the Roebling brothers, to illustrate all his concepts. Artwork has always been a part and parcel of selling space to the public. R.A. Smith and there's countless people who specialized in this, and it's been very, very successful.
Got a message from Alan. Alan, are you able to unmute yet, or you've given up on it? If you can't, I'll read your question out. No sign from Alan, so presumably you can't. Alan Marlow has asked, what things have you represented in your paintings which have turned out to be totally wrong when the probes finally got there and seen the real thing? Yes, we did it with Doctor Who and Titan. I know, yes, and Invisible Enemy. We got it wrong.
I've had paintings go out of date while I've been working on them. And so the best I do in those circumstances is finish the painting and label it something like Titan as it was once thought to look like. I'll make it an historic depiction. I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head, but I have had, actually, yes, real recently, anticipating what Ultima Thule, whatever they call it now, I forget its new name, Arikoth, that strange little Kuiper Belt object that New Horizons flew past. And I knew it was a double-lobed object. And so I did a series of illustrations for a couple of magazines and things where I anticipating what it was going to look like. And it looked nothing like any of them. So that's probably the most recent one where I tried to come up with the best I could come up with from the information. And it turned out to be even weirder than I ever imagined it to look like. So I did some new pictures that way. And, I just renamed the earlier ones as something else. But yeah, it's tricky, especially when it's very, very new information. So new discovery, I can be working on it and new information can come in that either supersedes what I've already done or adds to it enough that I might have to change something.
You mentioned earlier at the beginning, Ron, and I know this anyway, of course, but you got a fascination with Jules Verne because you actually translated the stories back from the original French to get it, and you drew the submarine is totally non-Disney, which isn't correct.
Well, this is a paper model somebody built of what the Nautilus would have looked like. Based on Verne's description, which is, a very modern-looking submarine. It's not nearly as sexy as the Disney one, which is really incredible production design. But Verne's Nautilus was pretty accurate for the time it was designed. Well, Verne didn't invent the submarine. There was a dozen successful submarines built before he wrote 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So the Nautilus was based on a lot of existing work. He just kind of scaled things up, gave it a library and dining room and picture gallery and things. But it was based on as much on reality as he could do it, as he could manage. But yeah, I've got a whole bookcase in the other room with nothing but Jules Verne in it. Like I said, he was one of the first real books I ever read in my life, and really inspired when I saw 20,000 Leagues in 1957 when I was, 10 years old. And Jules Verne's been with me this whole time. I really like Jules Verne books. I'm rereading some right now, as a matter of fact.
One point I know is before you joined the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, you were actually doing commercial advertising illustrations. Were they just sort of anything, or were they linked to some space aspect?
Yes, whatever came in the door that day, toasters, shoes, real estate ads, annual reports. I was just the artist working for these people, and this thing landed on my desk. We told we need an illustration for this bank advertisement, so I would do it. And so I was doing space art. I got home at night, largely because I was getting sick and tired of doing toasters.
You didn't put a rocket engine on a toaster then, or anything? Wings on a toaster?
By the way, back to Jules Verne for a second. It's always been my theory, and I think it's supportable, that Jules Verne invented the science of astronautics. He was the first person, scientist or otherwise, to put space flight on a strictly mathematical basis. No one had done it before him. Newton, anyone. He calculated the escape velocity. No one had done before. Verne was the first person to calculate escape velocity in relation to space travel. His whole flight to the moon was the trajectory was all calculated. So he was the first person to put space travel on a mathematical and engineering basis. I think he deserves essentially inventing the science of astronautics. But then again, I like Verne a lot, so.
He says nice things about you.
I had a seance yesterday, and he was very sweet.
Alex Woods, another question actually. Can you unmute yourself? Unmute yourself?
Yeah, I was just wondering how large is the sort of community, if there is one, of professional space artists, people like you who are sort of dedicated to space art?
The IAAA the International Association of Astronomical Artists, has around 250 members. I might be a little bit mistaken on that, but that's what I think it is. And of these, I'm not sure how many are full-time professionals, but I think a couple of dozen are. And there's a lot of very serious amateurs who do incredible work all the time, disturbingly good. So yeah, there's a very large community. It's a very tight-knit community. So a lot of sharing, a lot of mutual criticism, critiques, sharing of information. And there are people working in every imaginable medium. There's members who do sculptures, members who are musicians, members who work in glass and stained glass, and even fabrics. So any art that's inspired by space and astronomy is eligible for membership in the IAAA. as long as it has its roots, you know, in space and astronomy.
Oh, thanks.
Got a question from Mike Stone, which I think we've slightly touched on, but if Mike, if you want to unmute and ask it about if I've pronounced it correctly.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Ron. Good to see you after all this time.
No kidding, long time.
Yeah.
This long.
Very long. Yeah. I was just wondering if you tried your hand at painting the Oumuamua interstellar object, because there's been a lot of discussion about how it really looks.
Oh, indeed. I've done every variation that's been thought of. Most recently in print for Scientific American, which is this lumpy thing. But I've also done it as a solar sail.
Huh.
Again, this is excuse me, on my Black Hat Studios Facebook page. It's in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's backlit by the sun with thousands of holes in it because it's been perforated like crazy over the last 10,000 light years of travel. So I've done every time someone comes up with a different idea what this thing looked like, I've done a picture of it.
Uh-huh. So is that your impression that it might be intentionally made and not a natural phenomena?
Well, it's one of those things where I think it probably isn't, but I would really like it to be.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you.
I think we all want it to be Rama, don't we?
Yes.
There's two more on the way then.
Right. Another question from Griff. Griff, are you there? Unmute yourself, Griff.
I'm unmuted. I've very much enjoyed a couple of the From Germany to the Stars books in your Black Cat books range. I wonder if you're considering adding any more to it.
Actually, it's crossed my mind recently. I've been so busy the last couple of years, I kind of let the whole thing slide. But yeah, I had a couple of things in mind. I can't remember what they are at the moment. But yeah, there'll probably be a couple more things showing up in the near future. Another volume of the Rocket Riders series, I think, is on the agenda.
Right.
Which carefully explains to all the readers back in the 30s how rockets work by pushing against the air.
Of course they do. Right. I think we're sort of coming to a natural end of this. Anybody got another final question at all they want to ask before we let Ron get some lunch? Because remember, he's 5 hours behind.
I had lunch before.
These Americans always have early lunch. Probably up at 5:30 in the office, right? So anyway, thank you very much, Ron, for that. I mean, that's very intriguing.
Well,
I've known you many years.
Thanks for inviting me. Nice to see you, Mike.
And obviously, yeah, you met an old friend there. Probably, yes, fine. That's what these things are.
There were several old friends have shown up in here, which is nice to see.
So, anything from anybody else?
No.
Right. We've got some congratulatory messages coming in. So I think thank you very much, Ron. And I think
thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed this.
We can still do it visually if you're not unmuted. Don't worry about it.
Can I come in and thank you also, Ron? That was excellent.
Many thanks.
I'm hoping you can all hear me.
As Jeeves said already, I endeavor to give satisfaction.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit of a cartoonist myself, and so I've got a few mugs and things with my designs on. So you've given me some great new ideas. I'm going to go away and create a few more. I used to do all the leaving cartoons. I used to do all the leaving cartoons for people at Astrium. So that was some while back. But no, it's great to see all your works. I'm just impressed by the quantity and the quality. Amazing. I must also thank Matt. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Thank
incredible.
you, guys. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. This has been a fun and a pleasure.
Well, it's great to have you on board. And thank you also to Matt for introductions and for coordinating the Q&A excellently. And
well,
also,
loosely.
yeah, you've obviously had some practice, Matt.
So my swap shop and superstar days, yes.
Yeah. And also to Elizabeth for coordinating the event behind the scenes. Done a marvelous job. And if you've enjoyed tonight's talk and want to make a donation, please click on the donate button on the BIS website. So it all helps to cover our costs. I'm afraid we've not been able to concentrate terribly much on future evening lectures because we've been spending more time on the Reinventing Space conference on the 28th to 30th of June. So that's to come. We haven't yet firmed up anything to June, but we're looking at squeezing something in on the 15th, 16th or 17th of June. And someone has just reminded me that Asteroid Day is coming up a couple of weeks after that. So we might find someone to talk about asteroids. You might have some nice pictures somewhere, Ron. Now, we do have the China-Russian Technical Forum coming up on Saturday, the 5th of June. I think it's the 42nd. Someone will have to correct me. I think it's the 42nd time we've run this conference. Details are on our website. And on the same day, our West Midlands branch has a talk on a simple combined cycle engine by Lucas Beveridge. They have another talk on 31st July, Additive Manufacture of Combustion Chambers by Amelia Stanton. Now, I know Bob is somewhere in the audience here. Does he want to add anything to that? Bob Stanton? It sounds as if he might have already left us. No, can't see him coming up.
He left a few minutes ago, Alistair.
Did he? On the website, he's given all the details of the event if you want to join in on that. But I hope to see some of you at the Q2 Conference Centre on the 28th to 30th of June. As I said earlier, the full program is now available on our bis-space.com website. And we'll be presenting the Sir Arthur Clarke Awards at the conference dinner on the 29th of June. And also holding the BIS AGM on the 30th. So I hope everyone's sobered up by then to participate in that event. So thank you very much for a great evening and for really a fascinating talk. I think we'll have to have more along these lines and get more of your colleagues and artists along to encourage us. So thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again at our next event and seeing you at some of our weekend events too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye from the BIS.
Thanks very much, Ron.
Ta-ta. And signing off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So Malcolm Curry, if you're there, my video's turned off because I'm on an exercise bike.
Well, there are still a few more left, Matt. I'll get away.
Do you want to hang on, or we'll talk later about technical things?
Okay. Yeah.
I don't mind. We can do it another time.
Yeah, I think we ought to.
Well, just
thanks for organising it.
Well, sort of. I mean, Elizabeth did a lot of work. Yeah, we need just to do a post-mortem on using Google Meet. I think it actually went all right, but some people seem to be having difficulties viewing the screen. I can see it fine. Well, getting the screen up to size is the problem, even with the pin, and also trying to. We were seeing a picture of a picture.
Yeah, I really struggled.
Right. It's difficult to know actually without getting a screenshot from everybody about actually what they were seeing. I mean, I have to have the chat running so I can see it, but I was seeing the picture and I was seeing a certain number of people, like 3 or 4, obviously Ron at the top, and then whoever was speaking, a couple of others down the centre right hand side. But I think the only thing is, yes, the picture from Ron could have been more full screen, but he wouldn't have made it that much larger.
Yeah, I had a portrait gallery along the bottom, and then the top half of the screen was Ron's slides and the sort of presentation mode where you could see the next 5 slides as well.
Yeah, because that's the way, because he wasn't doing PowerPoint. We abandoned that. He wasn't doing, because the PowerPoint is very difficult to do what Ron was doing, which was actually stopping a slide, pausing, then going back and showing a couple of, and then running again. All he was doing was basically, these slides were just JPEGs, and it was just one at the top, boom, 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 next, back, or forward again, which was actually, unless you're using some animation or you want clever transitions, there's no real point using PowerPoint, perfectly honest. But it's the first time we've done it, so we're going to have to experiment and see what went wrong, what went right.
Well, can't you just do it on PowerPoint? Do it so that you progress to the next slide with a click, and then he does it at the speed he wants.
He was doing that, but it's actually, I've used PowerPoint a lot, and it's actually not that straightforward to then go back. Particularly with animations and the thing, which all right, he didn't have on those, but it's feasible. But we did try. Me and Ron tried this out on Monday, and that's when we gave up on the PowerPoint. Said, okay, just put them on the slides. So that's what
normally with the PowerPoint slideshow, you just use back and forward buttons, and you get back and forward easily.
Well, yeah, we do in theory, but it didn't work. Something went wrong. Obviously, over the Atlantic, it didn't like it. Right. We did try. Yeah. Yes, right. It should do backwards and forwards, okay, but Ron's version was not doing it.
Well, because what I had was, it was almost full screen, so I saw obviously the presentation made, but in terms of Google Meet, I had the full screen except for the footer bar, which I just couldn't get rid of.
No, it does seem to be different. The way it's differently set up, but the trouble with Google Meet is it's so new. Well, the trouble is, as soon as we sort out being Google, they'll change it. So we'll have to learn it again. But hey, it was worth a try.
Yeah. What you also get is lots of pop-ups when, even if I've minimized the chat, I still get pop-ups for that, and I get pop-ups for people joining and leaving, which is all a bit unnecessary, I think.
You do. I mean, it's only down the bottom right left-hand corner. I just ignore it. Well, and correction, as Jim and I can't ignore it. I just have to check, make sure it's nothing too important. But most of the time it is, and most of the time I'm looking on the right-hand side on the chat. But hey, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's bottom left and bottom right, because bottom right for chat when it was minimized.
Yes, sorry. Well, the bottom. Well, this may be different. My so and so's left, so and so's join comes up bottom left, not bottom right.
Yeah. No, I got that on bottom left, and then also bottom right. When I had the chat minimized, I got notifications for new chat messages.
Yeah.
All right. Well, no, I have to have chat running all the time.
Yeah.
Frankly, if they've had some system, I prefer it because I use 2 screens. Then I could have the chat on one screen and the presentation on the other. But Google won't split it. I don't think any of them will split it like that. But that would have been more useful. But hey, you know, what do I know?
Yeah. So John Davis here. I had the same thing, and I found it darn distracting because I just found it impossible to ignore the messages popping up. But never mind. I mean, as you said, it was worth a try.
Well, I mean, you don't have to have the messages popping up. I had to have the chat running, but you don't have to have the chat running.
I had so much trouble getting the thing started. Once it was sort of working, I didn't dare touch anything.
Well, I'm afraid that's another thing about computers. It's working, don't touch it. Yes, there is a bit of that about it. But in some ways, Google's easier than Teams or Zoom because it has less features on it. But in that way, perhaps it isn't quite as sophisticated. But
I vote Zoom. I hate Teams. I vote Zoom. I hate Teams.
Don't use Teams. Just don't use Teams.
I have to. For tomorrow, I'm using Teams for my Astronomical Society because Zoom only allows us free for 40 minutes. Teams doesn't, unless you buy it, of course. So I mean, Teams generally, most of them generally work most of the time.